The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched before Captain Lee Hun like a vast metal canyon. Hundreds of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up into the shadows above. Their eyes, some glowing, some black as space itself, all focused on the single human standing in the center of the floor. Hyun kept his back straight despite the weight of their stares. His uniform was clean but showed the wear of too many battles. The blue and white colors of Earth looked faded under the harsh lights of the council chamber. Behind him stood the other human survivors. 23 people. That was all that remained, of a species that once numbered in the billions. The council speaker, a tall being with silver skin and no mouth, spoke directly into their minds. Human Representative Lee Hyun, you have heard our judgment. Your species has lost the war against the Vorthak Empire. Your homeworld burns. Your colonies lie in ruins. According to galactic law, a defeated species must be eliminated to prevent future conflicts. Hyun said nothing. He had expected this. The galaxy had never liked humans. They called them too emotional, too unpredictable, too dangerous. When the war started, not one species had offered help. They had all watched as humanity fought alone against an empire that had crushed 17 other civilizations. However, the speaker continued, the council offers one final chance. Ancient law allows for trial by combat. If your species can produce a champion who defeats the Vorthak's greatest warrior, humanity will be granted the right to exist. Not as equals, but as servants. You will work in the mines and factories. Your children will know only labor, but you will live. A murmur ran through the assembled aliens. Some sounded amused. Others seemed bored. The Zelani delegates, tall and proud with their golden feathers, whispered among themselves. The hegemony representatives, their metallic bodies gleaming, showed no emotion at all. The ancient builders, older than most stars, simply watched with their large black eyes. If your champion loses, the speaker said, all humans will be executed within one standard cycle. Do you understand these terms? I understand, Hyun replied. His voice carried clearly through the chamber despite being just one human among thousands of aliens. Then choose your champion. Hyun stepped forward. I volunteer. Laughter echoed from the gallery above. A Zelani delegate called out, that small thing? It will be over in seconds. More laughter followed. The speaker turned its eyeless face toward Hyun. You are Captain Lee Hyun, age 32 standard years. You have served in 17 major battles against the Vorthak. Your military record shows courage, but also shows you are merely average by human standards. Are you certain you wish to face General Krextal? He has killed the champions of 12 species. He has never known defeat. I am certain, Hyun said. An old woman stepped forward from the group of human survivors. Dr. Kim Yoonji had been Earth's top diplomat before the war. Her hair was white now and deep lines marked her face. Captain Hyun, perhaps someone else. No, Hyun said without turning around. I know what I'm doing. The truth was simpler and darker. Hyun knew he was going to die. They all knew it. No human had ever been a match for a Vorthak warrior in single combat. The aliens were twice as tall, 3 times as strong, and had natural armor that could stop most weapons, but someone had to try. Someone had to stand up and show the galaxy that humans did not beg for mercy. The council speaker gestured with one long arm. Very well. The combat will take place in 3 standard days. You may use any weapon or armor your people possess. The Vorthak champion may use his natural abilities and traditional weapons only. The fight continues until one combatant dies or yields. There will be no interference from outside parties. Understood, Hyun said. Dismissed. Prepare yourself, human. In 3 days, your species lives or dies by your strength. As the council session ended, the aliens filed out of the chamber. Many looked at Hyun with what might have been pity. Others seemed eager to watch a quick execution. The Vorthak delegation, massive reptilian beings in dark armor, said nothing as they passed. But their leader, a scarred giant with yellow eyes, stared at Hyun for a long moment before leaving. When the chamber was empty except for humans, The survivors gathered around their champion. Dr. Kim placed a hand on Hyun's shoulder. Are you sure about this? Maybe if we asked for more time. There is no more time, Hyun said, and no one else to ask. We've been alone since this war started. A young man named Park Ji-won, barely 20 and one of the few children to survive, looked up at Hyun with wide eyes. Will you win? Hyun knelt, down to the boy's level. I will do my best. That's all any of us can do. But as he stood, Hyun's mind drifted to memories he tried to keep buried. His sister, Kim Nari, had been a lieutenant in the Earth Defense Force. She had died defending the Seoul colony when the Vorthak attacked. He remembered her last message, sent just before the colony fell. Show them what humans really are, brother. Show them we don't break. The colony had held for 6 days against impossible odds. 6 days longer than any other species had managed, against the Vorthak. When the enemy finally broke through, they found the human defenders had destroyed everything of value, rather than let it fall into alien hands. The Vorthak had won the battle, but they had paid a price that shocked them. That was 3 years ago. Since then, humans had fought on dozens of worlds. They had lost every major battle, but each defeat had cost the Vorthak more than they expected. Human soldiers did not run when beaten. They did not surrender when outnumbered. They fought until the last shot was fired and the last breath was taken. The galaxy had called this foolishness. They said humans were too stupid to know when they were beaten, but Hyun knew better. Humans did not fight because they thought they could win. They fought because some things were worth dying for. Now, in 3 days, he would step into an arena and face the strongest warrior the Vorthak Empire could produce. He would probably die. But before he died, he would show the galaxy something they had never seen before. He would show them what it meant to be human. Walking back to their small quarters, Hyun touched the chain around his neck. On it hung a small piece of metal from the ruins of Seoul Colony. Nari's dog tags. He had carried them through every battle since her death. I'll show them, sister, he whispered. I'll show them what we really are. Hyun sat alone in his small quarters aboard the refugee ship. The walls were bare metal, cold to the touch. Through the single window, he could see the massive space station where the council met. Its lights twinkled like stars, but they brought him no comfort. He closed his eyes and let his mind drift back to the beginning. Back to when humanity first met the Vorthak Empire. It had been 5 years ago. Dr. Park Min-ho was working in his lab on Europa Station when the first alien ships appeared. Min-ho was Earth's best xenobiologist, a quiet man who loved studying life in all its forms. He had dreamed of meeting aliens his whole life. The dream became a nightmare quickly. The Vorthak ships were huge and dark, shaped like the claws of some giant beast. They moved through space without any attempt to communicate. When Earth sent peaceful messages, the aliens ignored them. When human ships tried to approach, the Vorthak opened fire. The first battle lasted 6 hours. Humanity lost 12 ships and 3,000 people. The Vorthak lost nothing. Hyun remembered watching the news broadcasts with Nari in their apartment in New Seoul. She was on leave from the Defense Force, visiting him before her next assignment. They had eaten dinner together and talked about normal things. Work, friends, their parents who lived in the old country. Then the emergency broadcast started. Earth is under attack, the newscaster had said. Her voice was calm, but her hands shook as she read from the papers in front of her. Unknown alien forces have destroyed the outer defense grid. All military personnel are ordered to report to duty immediately. Nari had stood up from the table. Her face was pale but determined. I have to go, she said. Wait, Hyun had said. Maybe this is all a mistake. Maybe we can talk to them. Nari had kissed his forehead the way she did when they were children. Some people don't want to talk, brother. Some people only understand strength. That was the last time he saw her alive. The war had started that night. Within a week, the Vorthak had destroyed Earth's moon bases. Within a month, they had taken Mars. The alien empire moved through human space like a fire through dry grass, burning everything in its path. But humans fought back. Engineer Choi Yuna had been working on a mining station in the asteroid belt. When the Vorthak fleet arrived, the station had no weapons, no shields, no way to fight massive warships. But Yuna was smart, and she was angry. She had rigged the station's fusion reactor to overload. When the Vorthak flagship moved close to destroy the mining platform, Yuna detonated the reactor. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Earth. The flagship died with her, taking 5,000 Vorthak warriors into the dark. The aliens had never seen anything like it. In their 17 previous conquests, no species had ever chosen death over surrender. They did not understand what made humans different. Dr. Minho understood, though. In his final research notes found after the fall of Europa Station, he had written about the Vorthak weakness. They were perfect individual warriors, bred for single combat over thousands of years. But they fought as individuals. Each warrior sought personal glory. They did not work together the way humans did. Humans are pack hunters, Minho had written. We are weak alone but strong together. We fight not just for ourselves but for each other. The Vorthak cannot understand this, because they have never learned to love anything more than victory. Commander Kim Jinho had proven this at the Battle of Mars defense grid. When the Vorthak fleet arrived to take the Red Planet, Jinho had only 50 ships against their 300. The smart thing would have been to retreat and save his forces for another battle. Instead, Jinho had done something crazy. He divided his fleet into small groups and sent them to attack different parts of the enemy formation. The Vorthak warriors, eager for individual glory, broke formation to chase the human ships. Each alien wanted to be the one to claim victory over the humans. The result was chaos. The massive Vorthak fleet scattered across space, each ship fighting its own battle. Jinho's small groups picked off the isolated enemies one by one. By the time the aliens realized their mistake, they had lost half their force. Jinho died when his ship rammed the Vorthak command vessel, but his sacrifice saved Mars for another 6 months. More importantly, it showed other human commanders how to fight an enemy that was stronger but not smarter. The war had continued for 3 more years. Humans lost every major battle, but each defeat taught them something new. They learned to fight dirty, to use tricks and traps the honorable Vorthak would never consider. They learned to turn the enemy's strength against them. Lieutenant Seo Hana had held the final defense line at New Geneva Colony. She had only 20 soldiers against 200 Vorthak warriors. The colony was full of civilians trying to escape, on transport ships. Someone had to buy them time. Hana's squad had booby-trapped the entire colony. Every building, every street, every hiding place was rigged with explosives. When the Vorthak warriors came looking for honor in battle, they found only death waiting in the shadows. Hana died when the last transport ship lifted off, but she took 40 Vorthak with her. The civilians made it to safety. That was all that mattered to her. Hyun opened his eyes and looked at his hands. They were steady despite the memories burning in his mind. In 2 days, he would step into the arena and face General Krextal. The alien was twice his size, 3 times his strength, and had never lost a fight. But Hyun carried something the Vorthak champion did not understand. He carried the spirits of all the humans who had died fighting. Nari, who taught him that courage was not the absence of fear but acting despite it. Yuna, who showed him that sometimes sacrifice was the only victory available. Jinho, who proved that thinking differently could overcome superior force. Hana, who demonstrated that protecting others was worth any price. A soft knock came at his door. Dr. Kim entered without waiting for permission. She carried a cup of tea and set it on his small table. "You should eat something," she said, "and sleep." "I will," Hyun said, "after I finish remembering." Kim sat down across from him. Her old eyes were kind but tired. "What are you remembering?" "How to be human," Hyun said. He picked up the tea and took a sip. It was bitter but warm. Outside his window, the council station continued its slow rotation against the stars. Soon he would face the strongest warrior the galaxy had ever produced. Soon he would probably die, but first he would show them all what humanity really meant. The arena was bigger than anything Hyun had ever seen. The floor stretched out like a metal desert, smooth and empty except for the 2 circles marked in the center. Above him, thousands of alien beings filled the curved seats that rose up into the darkness. Their voices created a low rumble that seemed to shake the air itself. Hyun walked toward the center circle, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. He wore simple combat armor, nothing fancy. His weapon was a plasma sword, standard human military issue. It felt light in his hands, familiar from years of training and battle. The crowd noise grew louder as he reached his starting position. He could hear different alien languages mixing together. Some sounded like music, others like grinding metal. But the meaning was clear in every tongue. They were here to watch humanity die. At the far end of the arena, a massive door began to open. Steam poured out of the darkness beyond and the crowd fell silent. Heavy footsteps echoed across the arena floor, each one like thunder. General Krextal stepped into the light. The Vorthak champion was even bigger than Hyun had expected, 9 feet tall and covered in natural armor that looked like black scales. His arms were thick as tree trunks, ending in claws that could tear through steel. Yellow eyes glowed in a head shaped like a dragon from old Earth stories. The general carried no weapon. He needed none. His claws were sharper than any blade, his hide tougher than most armor. Scars covered his body, proof of the many battles he had won. Each scar told the story of another species that had fallen before him. The crowd erupted in cheers as Krextal took his position in the far circle. The Vorthak delegates roared their approval. Other aliens joined in, excited to see the famous champion in action. They had come to watch a quick execution, and they were not disappointed with what they saw. The council speaker appeared on a platform above the arena. Its voice filled every mind in the great space. Citizens of the galaxy, you are here to witness trial by combat. General Krextal of the Vorthak Empire will face Captain Lee Hyun of the human species. The combat will continue until one yields or dies. Let the trial begin. A horn sounded, deep and loud. The duel had started. Krextal moved first, crossing the distance between them in 3 long strides. His claws swept down in an arc that would have cut a normal being in half. But Hyun was already moving, rolling to the side as the claws scraped sparks from the metal floor. The human came up with his plasma sword active, the blue energy blade humming with power. He struck at the general's leg, but the blade barely scratched the thick armor plating. Krextal's backhand sent Hyun flying across the arena floor. The crowd cheered as Hyun rolled to a stop 20 feet away. Blood trickled from his mouth, but he pushed himself back to his feet. The Vorthak champion had not even used his full strength, and already the human was hurt. Krextal spoke for the first time, his voice like grinding stone. You are brave, little human, but bravery will not save you from death. Hyun wiped the blood from his mouth and raised his sword again. We will see. The general attacked again, this time with both claws striking like lightning. Hyun dodged the first swipe, but the second caught his shoulder, tearing through his armor like paper. Pain shot down his arm, but he managed to strike back, his plasma blade cutting a thin line across the alien's chest. Krextal looked down at the wound with surprise. It was shallow, barely more than a scratch, but it was the first blood he had, shed in combat for over a year. The crowd murmured in amazement. No one had expected the human to last this long, much less draw blood from the champion. The duel continued. Krextal pressed his attack, using his superior reach and strength to keep Hyun on the defensive. The human's armor was soon torn in a dozen places, blood seeping through the gaps. But each time he fell, he got back up. Each time the general landed what should have been a killing blow. Hyun somehow survived. In the stands, the alien spectators began to whisper among themselves. They had seen many champions fall to Krextal. All had died quickly, overwhelmed by the Vorthak's superior power. But this human was different. He fought like someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Hyun's mind drifted back to his training days on Earth. Master Wan Taik had been an old soldier, a veteran of the corporate wars before the aliens came. He was small, and quiet, but his students learned quickly not to underestimate him. Strength is not about never falling, the old man had taught him. Strength is about always getting back up. The warrior who falls 1,000 times but rises 1,001 times is stronger than the one who never falls at all. Another strike from Krextal sent Hyun crashing into the arena wall. The impact knocked the wind from his lungs and sent stars dancing across his vision. The general approached slowly, confident that the fight was nearly over. "You have fought well," Krextal said. "But this ends now." Hyun struggled to his feet, using the wall for support. His left arm hung useless at his side, probably broken. His sword flickered as the power cell ran low from the constant impacts. Around the arena, some aliens were already leaving, bored by what they thought was a concluded fight. But Hyun was not finished. As Krextal raised his claws for the final strike, the human did something unexpected. He smiled. "You want to know something about humans?" Hyun said, his voice carrying clearly across the arena. "We do not fight alone." Krextal paused, confused by the human's words. In that moment of hesitation, Hyun struck. Not with his sword, but with his good hand, driving his fist into a gap in the general's armor plating. It was a weak blow, barely, enough to bruise the alien's thick hide, but it was not about the damage. It was about the message. The crowd fell silent as they realized what they were seeing. The human was not just fighting for his own life. He was fighting with the memory of every human who had died in the war. He carried their strength, their courage, their refusal to give up even when defeat seemed certain. Krextal stepped back, his yellow eyes narrowing. For the first time in his life, he was looking at an opponent who truly puzzled him. This small creature should have died 10 times over, yet it continued to fight. More than that, it seemed to grow stronger with each exchange. The general raised his claws again, but there was uncertainty in his movements now. The crowd sensed it too, leaning forward in their seats. What had started as an execution was becoming something else entirely, something that none of them had expected to see. The arena had grown quiet. Thousands of alien beings watched in silence as the wounded human faced the mighty Vorthak champion. What should have been over in minutes had stretched into nearly an hour. Blood covered the metal floor, most of it human. Hyun stood with his back against the arena wall, breathing hard. His armor was torn to pieces, hanging from his body like broken wings. His left arm was definitely broken now, and his right leg could barely support his weight. But his eyes were still clear, still focused on his enemy. Krextal circled him like a predator stalking wounded prey. The general's confidence was returning. The human had surprised him with his resilience, but flesh and bone could only endure so much punishment. It was time to end this. "You have fought longer than I expected," the Vorthak said, "but your body is failing. Surrender now and I will make your death quick." Hyun pushed himself away from the wall, standing as straight as his injuries would allow. "I told you before, humans do not fight alone." He closed his eyes for a moment and his mind filled with memories, not his own memories this time, but the memories of those who had taught him how to fight. Nari's voice whispered in his mind. His sister had been small, even for a human woman, but she had been the best defensive fighter in her unit. "Size does not matter," she had told him during their sparring sessions. "What matters is knowing where to strike and when." Hyun opened his eyes and shifted his stance. His movements were different now, more careful, more precise. Instead of trying to match Krextal's strength, he began to move like water, flowing around the aliens' attacks instead of meeting them head-on. The general struck with his right claw, expecting to catch the human off guard. But Hyun was no longer where the blow was aimed. He had slipped to the side, letting the claw pass harmlessly by his head. His plasma sword, powered by its last energy cell, cut a deeper line across Krextal's arm. The crowd stirred. That was the second time the human had drawn blood. Engineer Choi Yuna's knowledge filled Hyun's thoughts next. She had been a genius with machines and systems, able to find weaknesses that others missed. Before her death, she had studied Vorthak physiology, looking for ways human weapons could penetrate their natural armor. Hyun began to target specific points on the general's body, the gaps between armor plates, the soft spots around joints, places where even natural Vorthak protection was thin. His strikes were weaker than before, but they were finding their marks. Krextal roared in frustration as the human's blade found another weak point, this time behind his knee. The wound was shallow but painful, and it slowed his movement slightly. How was this broken creature still fighting? How was it getting stronger instead of weaker? Commander Kim Jinho's tactical wisdom came to Hyun next. The man who had sacrificed himself at Mars had been a master of reading his enemies, of seeing patterns in their behavior and exploiting them. Hyun watched the way Krextal moved, the way he attacked. The Vorthak champion was skilled, but he was also predictable. He had won so many fights through pure physical dominance that he had never needed to develop real strategy. Every attack followed the same pattern, designed to overwhelm opponents with raw power. But Hyun was no longer being overwhelmed. The human began to anticipate the general's moves, dodging claws that should have torn him apart, striking back at moments when his enemy was off balance. Each exchange lasted a little longer. Each attack by the Vorthak found empty air instead of human flesh. The crowd was leaning forward now, their earlier boredom replaced by fascination. In the Vorthak section, some of the warriors were standing, their eyes fixed on the impossible scene below. Their greatest champion was being outfought by a creature half his size. Lieutenant Seohana's fierce determination filled Hyun's heart. The woman who had held the line at New Geneva had been fearless in the face of impossible odds. Not because she thought she could win, but because she knew what she was fighting for. Hyun's attacks became more aggressive, more daring. He stopped trying to stay safe and started pressing forward, forcing Krextal to give ground. His plasma sword was almost dead now, its blue glow flickering like a dying flame, but still he pressed on. A sweep of his blade caught the general across the chest, leaving a line of burned scales. Another strike found the alien's shoulder, cutting, deep enough to make him grunt in pain. For the first time in the fight, Krextal took a step backward. The crowd gasped. The mighty champion was retreating. But it was Master Wantaik's final lesson that truly changed the tide of battle. The old warrior had taught Hyun that the greatest strength came not from the body, but from the spirit. That a fighter who truly understood what he was fighting for could overcome any physical disadvantage. Hyun stopped thinking about his broken body, his failing weapons, his certain death. Instead, he thought about the 23 humans watching from the stands above, children who deserved to see tomorrow, elders who carried the wisdom of Earth in their minds, scientists and artists and teachers who could rebuild their species, if given the chance. He thought about all the humans who had died fighting this war, not just the famous ones, but the ordinary people who had stood up when darkness came, farmers who had taken up weapons to defend their homes, doctors who had stayed to treat the wounded even as enemy ships filled the sky, parents who had died, protecting their children. They were all with him now, their strength flowing through his tired muscles, their courage filling his heart. Hyun's next attack was different from all the others. Instead of a careful strike aimed at a weak point, he launched himself directly at Krextal's center mass. The general raised his claws to block, expecting another desperate charge that would end in the human's death. But Hyun twisted at the last second, his sword finding a gap in the armor near the alien's heart. The plasma blade, powered by its final surge of energy, punched through scales and hide and buried itself deep in Vorthak flesh. Krextal roared in pain and shock, staggering backward. Green blood poured from the wound, staining his dark armor. He looked down at the injury in disbelief. It was serious, perhaps even dangerous. For the first time in his life, General Krextal felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The crowd was on its feet now, aliens calling out in dozens of languages. Some cheered for the human, amazed by his courage. Others demanded that the fight continue, hungry to see how it would end. But Hyun was not finished. As Krextal stumbled, trying to assess his wound, the human pressed his attack. His sword was dead now, its energy completely spent, but he still had his hands and his will. He struck at pressure points, at nerve clusters, at every weakness Yuna's research had identified. Each blow was precise, calculated to cause maximum impact. The general's responses grew slower, his massive strength hampered by pain and confusion. In the stands, the Vorthak delegation watched in stunned silence. Their unbeatable champion was losing to a human, a species they had dismissed as weak and primitive was proving them wrong in the most dramatic way possible. Krextal swung wildly, his discipline breaking under the pressure. But his claws found only air as Hyun flowed around him like smoke. The human's counterattack caught the general behind the knee, a precise strike that sent the massive alien crashing to the arena floor. For a moment, the great champion of the Vorthak Empire knelt on the metal surface, green blood pooling beneath him. Above, the crowd held its breath. The tide had turned. The arena was silent as death. General Krextal knelt on the metal floor, green blood dripping from his wounds. His massive frame shook with each breath, and his yellow eyes stared at the ground in disbelief. Above him, Hyun stood with his broken sword in his hand, barely able to stay upright. The crowd watched in stunned silence. In all the history of the Galactic Council, no one had ever seen a Vorthak champion brought to his knees by a member of another species. The impossible had happened. A human, small and wounded and supposedly weak, had defeated the greatest warrior in the galaxy. Hyun raised his dead sword above his head. One strike would end it. One blow would kill the general and win the trial by combat. Humanity would be granted the right to survive, even if only as servants. The Vorthak delegation leaned forward, waiting for their champion to die. The other alien races held their breath, amazed by what they were witnessing. Even the ancient builders who had seen civilizations rise and fall for millions of years watched with interest. But Hyun did not strike. Instead, he lowered his weapon and stepped back. "Get up," he said to the kneeling Vorthak. Krextal looked up, confusion clear in his reptilian features. "What?" "I said get up," Hyun repeated. "This fight is not over." The general stared at him for a long moment. Blood still flowed from his wounds, but none of them were fatal. The human could have killed him easily, but had chosen not to. Why? "You show mercy to your enemy?" Krextal asked, his voice rough with pain and bewilderment. "I show respect to a worthy opponent," Hyun replied. "Now get up. Fight me properly." Slowly, the Vorthak champion rose to his feet. He towered over the human, but something had changed between them. The arrogance was gone from his posture. The certainty of victory had left his eyes. "I do not understand you," Krextal said. "I have killed the champions of 12 species. I have never shown mercy to any of them. Why do you spare me?" Hyun wiped blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. "Because killing you would be easy. Understanding you is harder." The two warriors faced each other again, but the atmosphere had changed completely. This was no longer an execution disguised as a duel. This was something the galaxy had never seen before. Two fighters, each showing respect for the other's strength and courage. They began to circle each other, but their movements were slower now, more careful. Both were wounded, both were tired, but neither was ready to give up. "Tell me," Krextal said as they moved, "how do you fight with the strength of the dead? I have felt it in our battle. You carry more than your own power." Hyun nodded, understanding that the alien was asking a real question, not trying to distract him. "We call it memory. When humans die fighting for something important, their strength does not die with them. It passes to those who continue the fight." "Memory," the general repeated, testing the word. "We Vorthak fight for individual glory. Each warrior seeks to prove his own strength, but you fight for something else." "We fight for each other," Hyun said simply. "For the people we love, for the future we want to build, for the memory of those who came before us." Krextal stopped circling and stood still. His massive head tilted as he considered this idea. "In all my battles, I have fought only for myself, to prove I was the strongest, to add to my legend. I have never fought for another being." "Then you have never truly fought at all," Hyun said, but there was no insult in his words. Only sadness. The Vorthak champion looked around the arena, seeing it with new eyes. For the first time, he noticed the small group of humans in the stands. They were watching their champion with faces full of hope and pride. Even though Hyun was wounded and exhausted, they believed in him completely. "They would die for you," Krextal observed. "And I would die for them," Hyun replied. "That is what makes us strong." The general was quiet for a long moment. Then, to the shock of everyone watching, he began to remove his armor. The heavy plates fell to the floor with loud crashes, leaving him in just his natural scales. "What are you doing?" Hyun asked. "I am learning," Krextal said. "You have shown me something I have never seen before. True strength. Not the strength of muscle and claw, but the strength of spirit. I want to understand it." The crowd murmured in amazement as the two warriors approached each other. But instead of attacking, they stopped an arm's length apart. "I have fought many species," Krextal said, his voice carrying clearly across the arena. "I have defeated champions larger than myself, faster than myself, more skilled than myself. But I have never fought anyone who carried the souls of their people into battle. You fight not just for yourself, but for all who cannot fight. This is true warrior spirit." He knelt again, but this time it was not from defeat. It was from respect. "I yield," the general said. "Not because my body is broken, but because my understanding is complete. You have taught me what strength really means." The arena erupted in chaos. Aliens leaped to their feet, shouting in dozens of languages. Some cheered for the human victory. Others demanded that the fight continue. The Vorthak delegation sat in stunned silence, unable to believe what their champion had done. But Hyun barely heard the noise. He was looking at the alien kneeling before him, seeing something he had never expected to find. Respect, understanding, perhaps even the beginning of friendship. The council speaker appeared on its platform, its mental voice cutting through the noise. "The trial by combat is complete. The human champion has achieved victory. By ancient law, humanity is granted the right to continue existing." More cheers erupted from the crowd, but the speaker was not finished. "However," it continued, "the council has witnessed something unprecedented today. We have seen a warrior who chose mercy over vengeance, understanding over hatred. We have seen an enemy become an ally through the power of respect." The great chamber fell quiet again as the speaker's words sank in. "Therefore, the council votes to grant humanity not just survival, but full membership in the galactic community. You will not be servants. You will be equals." The surviving humans in the stands wept with joy. Dr. Kim covered her face with her hands, overwhelmed by relief and pride. Young Park Ji-won cheered loudly, his voice echoing through the arena. But Hyun was not listening to the celebration. He was helping Krextal to his feet, supporting the wounded alien as they walked toward the arena exit together. "What will you do now?" the Vorthak asked. "Rebuild," Hyun said. "Find a new world for my people. Teach our children about the past while helping them build a better future." "And what of the Vorthak Empire? We have been enemies for so long." Hyun smiled, the first genuine smile he had worn in years. "Enemies can become friends. You have shown me that today." As they left the arena, the crowd continued to cheer. But the sound was different now. It was not the bloodthirsty roar of spectators watching an execution. It was the celebration of beings who had witnessed something beautiful and rare. They had seen the birth of hope. Later, as the human survivors prepared to leave the council station, Hyun stood at the window of their ship and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among those lights was a new home waiting for humanity, a place where children could grow up in peace, where the memory of Earth could live on in new gardens and new cities. He touched the chain around his neck, feeling Nari's dog tags beneath his fingers. "We did it, sister," he whispered. "We showed them what humans really are." And in the darkness of space, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if they too were celebrating the victory of hope over despair, of understanding over hatred, of love over fear. Humanity had found its place among the stars at last.